Ukraine managed to sink another ship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet while its drones strike at several parts from St. Petersburg to oil facilities to defense industries further east, southeast of Moscow. Russians obviously strike back, and on the ground the initiative is with the Russian side, which gains additional ground while both sides prepare for a long war with their developments and innovations in the defense industry. We're going to talk about this and more in this situation report about the war in Ukraine. We'll start off with the air attacks. There was a Russian air attack being reported with 33 Shahid drones. 22 of them are reportedly shot down. At least that's what Ukraine claims. 2 S-300 missiles managed to get through, though. A second attack was with 20 Shahid drones. 19 of them intercepted. Again, 2 S-300 managed to get through. Ukraine, on the other hand, hit an oil facility in the Bryansk Oblast, and we have a video here of the fire brigades trying to extinguish the fire. According to reports, at least 4 fuel tanks were destroyed in that attack, and as we can see, we have clear proof of it being successful. Ukraine also struck St. Petersburg in its longest distance strike so far with its drones. Here, as the bird flies distance is roughly 1,000 kilometers. Ukraine are saying, though, that the flight distance was, I think, 1,300, which would indicate that the drone was following a flight path that leads it past stronger points of Russian air defense, which allowed the drones to even reach that far. The Russians say, though, that 2 drones were disabled with electronic warfare over the ocean here, and another one was shot down with their air defense. We do know, though, that another drone has managed to hit something in Tambov, here in the southeast of Moscow. There's a powder factory, and at least the pictures would indicate something was seriously damaged. Russians claim, though, that Russians confirm that it was an attack. They claim, though, that electronic warfare has disabled the drone, so it might have set something else afire. As of right now, I can't confirm if damage was actually done to the powder factory. Let's go to the developments along the front line. We start off on the eastern frontier, Kharkiv to Luhansk. The Russians are continuing their attacks on Kupiansk, and we have minor successes by the Russians. The Russians managed to regain positions here, northeast of Ivanivka. If you follow the situation reports for a while, you know that this area here has changed hands probably 6-7 times already, and now it's back in Russian hands. They have managed to advance further south here as well. They've crossed over that railroad line here, and Krochmalne is now being considered in the gray zone. So according to even Ukrainian side, the Ukrainian forces have probably given up the town, which is at the on the road towards Novoselivsk and then Svatove. So the Ukrainians are getting pushed back in this region as well. The advances itself aren't that big, but obviously this is one of the main supply lines here, the line of communication along that whole frontal region. Along that for that whole region of the front, so it's a challenging situation for the Ukrainians. Other than that, north of the Seversky Donetsk River here, I cannot confirm any fresh changes since the last situation report. We have some changes south of it, though. Here at Bilohorivka, the Russians managed to advance further in this area. They captured several hundred meters in the direction of the town itself and have reached the first houses in their recent attacks. We also have further Russian gains at Vesele. Here recently they have managed to take this. Now roughly this whole area fell into the Russian hand. We have here a Ukrainian mill blogger confirming it, that Vesele is more or less in Russian hands now. The Russians had already claimed that they took the town. Now we have the confirmation. Yes, Ukraine has actually lost Vesele. The overall advance there was in 900 meters depth, and 3.6 kilometers width. So in comparison, a fairly sizable advance. But again, in comparison, obviously, these advances are still fairly slow. The Russians also managed to gain some ground south of Rostolivka. Here in that area, they managed to advance somewhat in those tree lines. Exactly how much, I'm not completely sure, but we know that they advanced somewhat here. West of Bakhmut, they also managed to gain ground, while there are some claims right now actually that Bodanivka is already fully in Russian hands. I cannot confirm anything. I haven't seen video evidence or picture evidence of this yet, but we do know that they have been up to here in fresh geolocalizations. So we know that they advance along the road here and have recently made gains, small gains in Bodanivka. As said, the Russians right now are claiming Bodanivka is fully in their hands. I have no confirmation of this. If it's true, we should know better in the next situation report. Other than that, close to Bakhmut, Klishivka, and Drivka, I cannot confirm any changes. It seems to be the case that the front line has been stable there. So we go directly to Avdiivka. Here in Avdiivka, we have Russian attacks at close to Sepove. The Ukrainians are saying that the Russians try to bypass the coke plant here in the north between Stepova and the coke plant. So far, I do not see that they have had any successes, but we are able to confirm Russian successes in this region here, more or less this piece somewhat here. There are some dachas here that have fallen into Russian hands and they advanced along the road here. So they gain additional ground in the south or southeast of Avdiivka itself. We also can confirm that the Russians gained additional ground in this area here. Here we have another video, another picture from Ukrainian mill bloggers confirming that they lost some additional ground. Just for orientation, this is this lake here. So the Russians have managed to push further to the northwest along Pervomaiske. The Ukrainians are massively under pressure here now. Their supply line to that part of the front line where there are the remnants of the houses of Pervomaiske, which is along that whole road, that town. Those houses, those positions are under pressure, and we should expect a evacuation, a withdrawal, a fighting withdrawal from the Ukrainians from that point, as they are somewhat in danger of being cut off, or at the very least their supply is in danger. So it seems likely that they'll probably withdraw a few hundred meters further west to solidify their positions once again. Ukraine is reporting that the Russians have used on Avdiivka a total of 250 gliding bombs in January this year. That's already more than in all of 2023 last year when it comes to Avdiivka itself, and which shows us the intensity of the attacks of the Russians on Avdiivka. Just to illustrate it, here we have a fresh Russian video of one of those bombs being hit against Vuhledar, or being used against Vuhledar. According to the Russians, they used a FAB 1500, so a bomb with a total weight of 1500 kilos, and you saw the massive size of the explosion, but still the building kept standing. As there is no snow, this video is likely a few months old, a few weeks at the very least, probably somewhat from late fall last year, but it shows the power of those bombs that are being used against the Ukrainian positions in this region. Further south, in close to Marinka, we have the fighting for Novomikhailivka that is continuing. The Russians are mostly pushing from the southeast and somewhat from the north, but so far they don't seem to have had much success. There are some indications that they might have advanced further to the west here towards that road that is connecting Vuhledar here with Konstantinivka, which would obviously endanger Novomikhailivka as well as Vuhledar should they reach the 0532, which is going along here. Overall, though, not much changes. And if we go further west, I can report a lot of attacks that are being reported. The Russians themselves claim they attacked Staromayorsk from the west. They attacked Uroshaine from the south. They attacked from Novodonetsk and Novomayorsk, and they attacked towards Rivnopil. But I cannot see that there was any change in territory in this region. South of Orikhiv, fighting is being reported. Fresh claims by the Russians that they gained additional ground close to Verbove. As of now, I cannot confirm it, so it might be true, but as of now, I simply do not know and don't have the facts. Further west to the Dnipro, the Russians claim that they had success in Krinky, but there is not really proof there. Now the fighting for Krinky is reaching a point where it feels increasingly pointless for the Ukrainians. There are fresh claims. The soldiers fighting on there are being turned into heroes. I already saw comparisons with the Battle of Thermopylae. I'm not sure how to pronounce it in English, but the fighting at the Thermopylen in German, in Greece, where Leonidas fought with 300 Spartans against the Persian army, because there's only one company of Ukrainians left, holding back 10 times, 20 times, 100 times their number here. While the fighting there is continuing, it's still costing the Ukrainians a lot and must lead to the answer to the question whether it's actually worth it. I have a video here which is cut at the point where it's becoming unpleasant. So this shows us a Russian attack on the and this shows us a Russian attack on one of those boats that is supplying it. We see here, this should probably be the Konka, the river going directly to Krinky, and we can see the boat with several soldiers on board and likely bringing supplies. I have no idea why they're stopping there. Maybe the engine failed. That could be an option, but as you can see, an FPV drone uses that they were fairly slow and now apparently seem to be static, and it is hitting the boat and causing casualties in this regard. So everything that is being brought towards Krinky is under permanent threat. The Ukrainians are definitely suffering serious losses. Now we have claims from the Russian side, or about the Russian side too, that most of what they sent there is getting destroyed, that they're losing horrendous numbers of people because the Ukrainian support with FPV drones and artillery is so effective. But in total, it still causes massive Ukrainian losses, where the question has to be asked whether that's worth whether that fits the overall strategy, because to turn this into an actual bridgehead that would allow the Ukrainians to advance further seems to be impossible as of now. From the Crimean Peninsula, we have additional news about Sevastopol. Here we have a video, a picture showing us changes in the harbor, where you can initially see a bigger boat. After that, only the upper parts of the structure are visible out of the water. Artesh, the resistance group, the pro-Ukrainian resistance group made of Crimean Tatars, already said that, first claimed that the Ukrainians had sunk a boat in there. Now satellite pictures seem to indicate that this is true, and the talk is about the Stenka class patrol boat. You can see one here that was sunk there. It's not completely clear about what. This is, by the way, a Ukrainian one. The Russians captured some of them, and the Ukrainians inherited some of them from the Soviet Union as well. So this boat supposedly might have been hit with a unmanned surface vehicle, so a naval drone from the Ukrainians, was then towed back in there and sank at its mooring while it was waiting for a dry dock, where the dry dock capacity is highly limited after Ukrainian strikes on them, destroying ships inside of dry docks and thus taking out the dry docks, at least for the time being. This overall is not that dramatic loss for the Russians, but it's still one more ship that was likely sunk by the Ukrainians here in the Black Sea. Overall, the Ukrainian side is expecting the resumption of bigger offensive operations in the direction of Kupiansk and Liman at the end of the month. So they are talking about end of January, beginning of February, when the months are changing. The Ukrainians expect that the Russians initiate bigger attacks again, and at the same time the Ukrainians are suffering from severe shell shortage at that point. The Russian attempts to solve their shell shortage, which was reported last summer, has apparently led to some success in comparison to the Ukrainians. The Ukrainians are saying they shoot the Russians shoot 5 times as many shells, and in specific areas regarding the intensity of the fighting, it can be up to 10 times as many shells being fired with the Russian artillery in comparison to the Ukrainian. And obviously, with artillery being the main killer in this war and the most effective weapon, this is a serious problem for the Ukrainian side. The Kiev Independent, I think it's only online newspaper from Ukraine, has reported that Ukraine has now allotted 466 million US dollars for additional fortification work. We talked about it in the past that Ukraine apparently and obviously acknowledges that 2024 will be a more defensive work, and there is now a picture showing how those fortifications can actually work. We've seen it in the past. I showed you the pictures where they built the base structure here, and this is obviously some kind of command post. We see the oven, the heater here. We see bunk beds. They seem to be connected with each other, and this seems to be a staged propaganda picture, to be honest, if we see how clean everything is. But in regards to this, those are supposedly how they are going to be used, dug deep underground and thus being safe from bombardment. They will offer complete shelter, but at the same time allow for communication, command and control, etc. for the Ukrainian side. Russia has apparently done some tests with its electronic warfare. At least those are the claims that I find, because roughly this area here had problems with GPS. GPS was unusable over the last days. There are some claims that it could be also the NATO maneuver, that it could be in connection with NATO. That seems highly unlikely though. So the consensus seems to be that it's the Russians. I have not seen a full confirmation yet. That's why I leave a sliver of a doubt, as I've seen the other claims too, and so far I haven't heard a denial from NATO that they have anything to do with it, but it seems more likely that the Russians basically took out GPS up to even crossing into Germany. So like 2/3 of Poland, GPS was disabled, which causes serious problems nowadays, obviously, with navigational systems and cars no longer working, and at the same time showing an impressive effectiveness of the Russian electronic warfare if it was Russian. The partisan activity is still continuing as well. We have a picture here from the RDK, that's the Russian Volunteer Corps, fighting on the Ukrainian side. They did fresh raids in Bryansk, and this is showing them ambushing a truck and causing casualties on the Russian side. Just because we don't talk about it much lately doesn't mean that they have been inactive. They are still doing cross-border raids, and they are still attacking Russian military targets all the time. The Ukrainians believe that a P-35 Progress was used against them. This is a ASM, an anti-ship missile from the 50s. It's fairly inaccurate, but carries a 1,000 kilogram warhead, and apparently they believe the Russians have started using them against them now. The Russians claim that they have developed cluster munition for laying minefields with MLRS. This would cause serious problems. Again, because with the big amount of MLRS on the Russian side, and at the same time having shown the effectiveness of mines in defeating Ukraine's counteroffensive, now being able to deploy mines remotely from every kind of artillery system would obviously strengthen the Russian defense seriously. And at least according to TASS, they are now having developed this, and it's going to be deployed fairly soon. The deputy head of the GRU, Skibitsky, is saying that the Russians have now changed their their KH-101 cruise missiles massively. They have learned from their experiences in the war, and now they have electronic warfare system and a system to reduce the infrared signature. I think that might be actually lost in translation, because we do have pictures here, and that is showing one, and those are flare dispensers. So it might be that it's not about hiding somehow the heat signature of the KH-101, but rather making heat-seeking missiles go for a different target by dispensing flares during flight, as we've seen in the past situation reports, where I've shown you a video of a cruise missile dispensing flares. And there's a video of a Somali that was captured by the Ukrainians. He is telling that he came from Mogadishu to Addis Ababa, and from there to Moscow. He signed a contract. He went to Russia on a tourist visa, but couldn't work. So he signed a contract with the Russian military. On the 3rd of December 2023, he signed the contract, and on the 7th of January, so barely a month afterward, he was already being captured by the Ukrainians as a prisoner of war, showing that his whole training can be at most have been a full month. He said that he was offered the equivalent of $1,900 in payment, a Russian passport, and they told him that he's going to be used in Russia, and so he expected not to be on the front line, but obviously Russia considers those 5 oblasts here to be Russian territory as well. So from their point of view, we could even argue he wasn't even lied at, because they think this is all of this here is Russia as well, so he would be used inside of that as well. But it shows us how much the Russians feed cannon fodder to the front. 1 month is not even, it's basically at most half of a basic training, depending on how long it is inside of NATO. Nobody can become even halfway proficient soldier in that time, but the Russians already send people at the front with this education. In the political sphere, we have Medvedev again. He basically said that terminating the Russian statehood remains Russia's goal. He said the presence of an independent country on historic Russian ground is unacceptable. This is obviously, I mean, Medvedev seems, we know that he's acting like a mad dog, like a dog with rabies at times when he talks, but he's still having official function in the Security Council. And at the same time, historic Russian lands are pretty extensive. If we go back to the Russian Empire, then big parts of Poland were once Russian, all of the Baltics, Finland, and obviously, depending on when you see the Caucasus, even parts of Persia, of Iran, and obviously most of the Stans, at some point even Alaska would be historic Russian territory if he claims this, showing us once again that a peace deal that is on even grounds, that is any more than a Ukrainian capitulation, is out of the question as of now. Colonel Sergei Volkov from the Rosgvardia was sentenced to 6 years in prison in Russia. The Russians say he bought radar systems for the protection of the Kerch Bridge and gas pipelines in Krasnodar, despite knowing that they were defunct. So, in total, it was corruption in the size of 400 million ruble that was involved in all of this. I'm not sure, I didn't see how much of that he supposedly pocketed, but he was sentenced to prison for allegedly buying or deploying radar systems while knowing they don't work. And TASS is reporting, no, it's not TASS, we have it here. Kommersant is reporting that the Turkish banks universally refuse to work with Russian ones after the fresh US sanctions. At the same time, a couple of days ago, there were reports that 2 Chinese banks are severing all their connections with Russian defense industry, or even somewhat connected to the defense industry. So the banking pressure on Russia is still getting bigger, even though so far it apparently has not been successful enough. Ukraine has also tested a prototype for a new kamikaze drone. This itself is supposedly far away from the end result. Like I read that the capacity for fuel is far too small for what it's going to be. So this can be more understood as a test bed. But the important thing is this is freshly built, homegrown, and it's running with a jet engine instead of the other piston engine drones that we have seen so far. Ukraine is also saying that for the first time they shot down Shahid drones with a Franken SAM system. Those are Ukrainian SAM systems that are being converted to use Western air defense systems. Most likely we're talking about Buk and Kup systems that can probably be used to shoot sea sparrows. There have been experiments in the past, and those are the most likely systems to be used as so-called Franken SAMs. Also, Ukraine is saying they doubled their 155 millimeter shell production. The problem is obviously what is the starting point. Doubling sounds great, but we don't know what the initial number was, so we don't know how impressive that is, and we still see shell hunger on the Ukrainian side. Also, there was a fresh test of a unmanned ground vehicle in Ukraine, as we can see here, fairly good off-road capability while carrying a machine gun on top. So we see innovation on the Ukrainian side as well to improve their positions during this ongoing war. Then we have some information about German aid that is being announced. Fresh ammunition, you can basically see it yourself. Planned are 20 fresh Marder IFVs, 50 more Gepard. Those are the self-propelled anti-air systems. And you can see various number of other systems. At the same time, the German Chancellor said for Ukraine, it's planned to give more than 7 billion euros in 2024. MBDA, that's the producer of the Tauros, has publicly said that they can start production whenever they want. There was a vote in the parliament which was initiated by the opposition party, so even those who are advocating for the delivery of the Tauros voted against it. An event in Parliament that is not happening for the first time. And one of the arguments against delivering Tauros was that if we hand them over to Ukraine, we don't have any more for ourselves and we can't build them again. And within 24 hours, the producer said, no, we could help integrate them into Ukrainian jets and we can build new ones, no problem whatsoever. France is going to hand over 50 AASM, Armement Air Sol Modulaire. Those are Hammer, or also called Hammer. Those are guided bomb kits that have been developed for the French Air Force. They are gliding bombs. They are guided bombs, but at the same time they can use standard iron bombs. Equip them with a gliding set, and then also there's the possibility to add a rocket motor to it to extend the range. So the range is supposedly over 50 kilometers. France is now going to give Ukraine 50 a month from now on. Also, 6 French César, the self-propelled howitzers are coming, and France said in 2024 they're going to produce 72 of them. France is still looking for the financing of 60, as they themselves have already financed 12 at the worth of 60 million. I guess 300 million are to they are looking for 300 million. At the same time, you might obviously ask why the, I think, second biggest economy in the European Union needs aid for this, but that's a different debate. Also, about what I forgot about the AASM, they have GPS as well, so they are well guided bombs that are supposedly going to be really efficient for Ukraine and really effective. And the EU Commissar Thierry Breton said that the European Union this year is going to produce 1.3 to 1.4 million shells for artillery, and obviously a big share of it is supposed to go to Ukraine. Those are the claims we hear from the European Union. And finally, I have a video where you can see how Ukrainian helicopter pilots avoid being shot down, and this is some pretty insane low-level flying, which you don't see all the time. But yeah, we see 2 Mi-7 transport helicopters that the Ukrainians also use for ground attacks, because they have like stubby wings on the side where you can mount weapon pods, and those are flying here obviously close to the front line, and by flying so low they prevent their detection from radar. That was already it from me for now. If you like the situation report, then please give it a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. Leave a comment what you think about the current situation, and if you're new here, I would like to invite you to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss future videos. This channel is only possible because of the support of viewers like you. If you like to support the channel, you can do so by the means in the description. Thank you very much to everyone already doing it. And that's it from me for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back.